Welcome to the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of surrogacy, offering insights, sharing stories, and providing advice. Our mission is to illuminate every corner of surrogacy, from the emotional roller coasters and legal battles to the triumphant moments of birth and beyond. Surrogacy Warrior is more than just a podcast. It's a community for anyone touched by or interested in the transformative power of surrogacy. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Now here's the host of Surrogacy Warrior, Kimberly Surratt.
Welcome to Surrogacy Warrior, the podcast where we navigate incredible journey of surrogacy and assisted reproduction. I'm Kim Surratt. I'm your host, your passionate advocate for creating families through these remarkable paths. Today, we're talking to Eloise Drane, and she's the founder and CEO of Family Inceptions. And I don't remember exactly when I met you, but I know it was a very long time ago because you and I both of us have been in this at least 2 decades at this point, infertility and surrogacy space. Now, you have a much greater journey than me because you're a former egg donor and surrogate, and you now own Family Inceptions. She has her own podcast, and we're going to make sure that all of our links, everything gets to that podcast. It's called Fertility Cafe Podcast. And she does the same thing where she shares honest, empowering conversations about family building process from all sides. And, I consider you one of my fellow advocates in this space because my take on you is that you're into the education element of this, like I am, and just sharing and not just keeping it all to ourselves. But welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey as a former egg donor and surrogate, because obviously it gives you credibility. And sometimes I'm so jealous because I never started in that space, but just as the lowly attorney. But tell us about your journey there.
Well, talking about decades, gosh. The craziest thing is when I learned about egg donation back in 1998, clearly there's so much that has changed over the years, right? But I learned about egg donation in 98. I decided to apply closer to the end of 99. I was told that Black women didn't have infertility issues. It would be highly unlikely for me to be matched. And I assumed that they were correct because, again, we didn't have the information that we have today. But they did reach out to me 10 months later, and I ended up donating for the first time. And it was actually not the greatest experience, but went on, did subsequent donations. But this time, instead of it being an anonymous donation, I ended up knowing and selecting the intended parents that I decided to work with, who then told me a completely different story, that they've been seeking Black donors, some for years, couldn't find anything. And so it really kind of gave me one of those, like Oprah says, those aha moments. After my last, so I've done a total of 6 donations, twice for the same family. And then after my last donation, I'm like, I should probably start an egg donation agency. Specifically, I was going to focus more on the BIPOC community. But then I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son. I was working on my master's, full-time job, just 3 kids already, like all of the things. But I decided to work for a surrogacy agency to start a donor program for them. And I learned about surrogacy and I was like, oh my God, yes, I can so do this. So fast forward, I ended up becoming a surrogate 3 times, delivering twins the first time, a boy the second time, and a girl the third time. And in that experience, when I was trying to apply to become a surrogate, and I'm talking about well-known agencies that we all know in the space, I applied through them. I've never got a phone call back, ever.
Oh, wow.
Now I don't even have morning sickness in my pregnancy. So I had picture perfect pregnancies, all vaginal deliveries, no complications. All of my children, nobody wanted to come out. So I had to be induced with everybody because they were all overdue. Like all of the things that you look for in a candidate, I was. The only thing that difference was, again, this is back in 2007, was I was a Black woman in the South.
Right.
So my first set of intended parents encouraged me to start an agency in the state of Georgia. And at the time, I was going to start, the state of Georgia was trying to pass a personhood bill. And all of the clinics got together, hired a lobbyist to obviously squash that bill. Luckily, it didn't pass. And then I then started the agency officially in 2008. And then, unbeknownst to me, also at the time, that I also became the first Black owned agency of its kind in the US. And in that time, just have seen a lot of different things that sometimes makes me cringe in this space. And then, and then you look at how far we've come from 20 some odd years ago to where we are now. And it's so much more open and more people are talking about it. And we have all these people have these podcasts now, and we're doing the education, we're doing the advocacy, and it's wonderful. But I still feel that as a space, as an industry, we're still missing a mark on a lot of things.
You're missing a huge mark. I mean, so my first surrogacy was in 2004. The baby was born in 4. So my first contract was in 2003. And you're right. I mean, we've come a long ways. But I mean, just that hint of where you said personhood legislation, and we squashed it. And I'm thinking, and we're still squashing, and we're still squashing, and it hasn't gone away. And in fact, it's ballooned, and right. And so it's really no different from that exact same day.
Mm-hmm.
But also just the education behind culture. And it's not just culture, but it's obviously all of our states operate so differently.
Mm-hmm.
But those of us in this space know better. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
or we should know better, and we're learning, but they're not is not fast enough. I mean, thank goodness for people like you who decided, yeah, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create my own agency, and I'm going to advocate because the South needs it. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah,
Unfortunately. And we don't just focus on the South. It just so happens that
yeah,
this is where I'm at. And this is kind of where I started. And this is where I have seen that there's a lot of work that still needs to happen in this area. But we, as an industry, we really need to start taking a look at, I had recently did an episode where I was talking about the responsibility that we take on when we raise our hand and say we want to be professionals in this space. And I don't think that there is enough of us that is taking that really seriously in being responsible in this space. Like I said, we all know that there's been a lot of changes that have happened, some good, some bad, whatever. But we really need to start thinking about the patients, the clients, the surrogates, the donors, the parents, and the children that we help bring into the world. We need to start putting them in the forefront first before we start worrying about the bottom line. Because this is not, I just recently saw a post that someone was talking about the compensation is ballooning out of control, and people are asking for all of this, and rightfully so.
yeah.
I've been a surrogate before with complications.
Well, it ignores how many years it was completely underpaid by
Yes.
significant amounts, and it's
Yes.
you look at it, and everybody, and it's not just inflation either, people. It's not just that, oh, at that time that dollar was worth something different. No, we're
Yeah.
talking in the past decade. It
Yes.
has changed that dramatically. And
Yes.
I agree with you. I think it's finally respecting our surrogates, finally respecting what their time is actually worth, what their bodies are going through, and putting real money on the table for what is really happening and shifting that dollar sum. There's a lot of professionals made a lot of money for a long time right now.
Yeah. And the fact that there was professionals making more than the surrogate who was doing all of the work is problematic.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's professionals that, they whine. I mean, this is my soapbox where, an average contract is $3,000 for the attorneys, and agencies make far more than that, and their profit margin is far higher than ours. And they're whining and cutting us down and want to know, can we do a contract for $500? It's like, I'm first off the one that degree. I also passed the laws that made this possible and donated all the time for it. But, it's, I'm thrilled to watch the compensation go up for the surrogates. I think it's important. And I do think there are crazy numbers sometimes.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, there are some things, and the thing about it is like I absolutely agree that they must increase their compensation 100%. Like I said, even with my very last journey, ended up having complications and that ultimately led to a hysterectomy. So, yes, there's always complications. And then you hear about surrogates who passed away during, doing a surrogacy pregnancy. And let's not even talk about the maternal care in this country right now. I mean, you're a woman just carrying a pregnancy, you're automatically at risk, let alone for somebody else. So there's that. But at the same time, there are so many families that are getting priced out because they cannot afford these kind of compensations and be able to afford then all of the extras that is being charged. And it's almost like, you know, I had a person ask me one time, well, if everybody would just reduce their cost and, the surrogate reduce her cost. And I'm like, well, let's just start even from insurance. We need to start there because every time you turn around, they're increasing premiums, deductibles, copays. This isn't just a one segment of you reduce and you reduce. This is so much larger than just a surrogate reducing her compensation.
Well, yeah. So, as you may know, I'm working on the insurance bill in California right
Yes.
now. So, and talking about advocacy, I'm so disheartened, to be really blunt, with our entire community right now because the lack of show up in California, the number of professionals in California in this space is tremendous.
Mm.
It's in the hundreds. It's probably in the thousands, to be really blunt, if you include clinic staff, right? And I'm begging people to show up in Sacramento with me. I mean, we had a good showing. 20 people, that's amazing. And these are 20 people that have been heartfelt about it, but 20 out of the big picture of how many people are in California. Insurance is at the heart of a lot of this, absolutely at the heart of most of it. Just the yeah, I want to touch on your hysterectomy for a second too, because I want to. One of the elements of the California bill is that we're going for pregnancy as a qualifying life event. We've
Hmm.
got 9 other states that have it right now, and to me, it's a critical element in society. It has really nothing to do. It's not solely to do with surrogacy. It has to do with a much greater group of women, which is they're not low income enough to be on Medicaid. They aren't lucky enough to have an employer with insurance. And the cost of insurance is so much that they can't, they'd rather pay the fines. And it's one of the tells, I think, of the ACA where they thought they were going to dupe everybody into insurance with this fine. But the costs are so bad that they can't. But the blatant comments of insurance about when you talk about pregnancy being one of the riskiest physical things a woman can do in her life and how much risk it puts her at. And they kept calling it in testimony a condition, which I understand insurance calls it a condition, but it just torques me because a condition, family building as a condition, that everybody has a right to it, but it's a condition when it comes
Right.
to
Hmm.
insurance. But
Hmm.
that risk of a hysterectomy and what it does to a woman,
Hmm.
I would love, because I've been looking for a little more talk around this conversation because
Hmm.
people throw down, oh, a full hysterectomy, here's $5,000 or here's 10 grand, as
Hmm.
if that cures the
Hmm.
long-term effects of a hysterectomy.
Hmm.
I mean, tell me your thoughts, how it impacted your life.
Hmm.
How,
So
what happens to a woman with a hysterectomy?
yeah, I mean, so I ended up having my last surrogacy baby, surro baby, and the pregnancy was picture perfect. And then after I had her, I ended up having to have a C-section. After I had her, I just couldn't stop bleeding. And months went by, still couldn't stop bleeding. And I'm not just talking about just the spot, every single day for months. Went back to the doctor and they were like, well, let's just do an endometrial ablation and that should stop it. And I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm willing to try anything. We did that and that actually caused more complications. So
I've heard that about that procedure a few
yeah.
times now.
Yeah. And it just so happened that my husband and I, in February of the following year, so I did the ablation, I think in like November or something. The following February, my husband and I, we went on vacation and I'm thinking everything is okay because this ablation is supposed to help stop the bleeding or whatever. Well, we're on vacation and they wake up to a pool of blood again. And obviously, and I'm mortified because now I'm on vacation, all of the things. And my husband's like, I thought this is, was supposed to be taken care of. I was like, yeah. And then it didn't just come with, the bleeding. It just came with a lot of cramping and pain and all kinds of stuff. So, of course, I immediately get back to the doctor's office and they were like, yeah, it might just been a fluke and just residual blood or whatever. Let's just see what happens the next month. So I again still had more bleeding the following month. And then the next month it came back again with a vengeance. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, a vengeance to the point where I had like literally fell on my floor to my knees because that's how painful it was.
And how far after delivery were you at this
So I
point?
delivered in July of the previous year. So we're
Okay.
now into April, May timeframe.
Okay.
And I'm still dealing with it.
That's my point. Okay.
Still dealing with it. Even after delivery in July. So went back to the doctor and they were like, well, let's try a couple of things or whatever. But if worst case scenario, we may want to consider a hysterectomy. And I'm just like, hysterectomy? Hold on a second. Like, I'm not ready for that. And at the time, I had just turned 40. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I don't want to have a hysterectomy. Like, and the thing about it is at that point, obviously I've had my 4 children. Now I've had four for other families. And you kind of attach yourself to a uterus making you a woman
Right.
and what it stands for to be a woman and to be set apart from, a man and all of the things. And I had that same attachment. And for me, it was something that I'm like, wait, this is, what has helped me bring in life and how I looked at what that really stood for. And obviously, and I was running my agency at the time. And I'm just like, I don't have downtime to have a hysterectomy. Like, there is no way in hell. So she was like, well, let's try these other things and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, fine. Well, the following month, it was even worse, if that could even be a thing. I called, I went in, and it was like on a Thursday. And she was like, I'm scheduling you for pre-op on Monday. You're having surgery on Wednesday. There was no, let's think about it, let's talk about it. It was like Thursday, you come in Monday on for a pre-op, you have surgery on Wednesday. And I'm like,
Just done.
I have 4 kids at home. My son was still young. Like I'm running a company. Like, wait, hold on. And it was, like either you do this or you could bleed to death. And this is at this point an emergency, and we're doing this ultimately to save your life because the bleeding was now happening internally.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
So I was like, okay. From that Thursday until literally Wednesday when I went into the hospital, I boo-hooed like no one's business. And I just, again, that attachment, all of the things that I was able to do with it. And I know I've done enough, and I was not going to have any more pregnancies. I was not going to have any more children, not for me or anybody else. So it was never about, oh, I'm going to do this
Psychological
again.
attachment. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I just could not wrap my head around how final It was. And that final decision wasn't made by me. It was forced, kind of. And so I'm like, okay, I went, I had the surgery. They did keep my ovaries so that I wouldn't go into early menopause, although I'm dealing with that nonsense right now and about to like pull the little bit of hair left that I have out. But so they left my ovaries, but it did alter me because again, it it was something that I was attached to. But I think though that it altering me was also a good thing because now when somebody is coming to us, we give them all the perspectives. Yes, surrogacy is wonderful and it's amazing and it's one of the most selfless, most beautiful things you can do for somebody else. But there's also another side to it that you have to consider. You can't just consider, I really want to do this for another family. And yes, the money is going to help me too, and all of the things. You have to consider that there's also bad sides to surrogacy. Just because you don't hear and see and all of the things, there's a whole gamut of surrogacy that happens, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we always tend to just always talk about the good
But
side.
yeah,
And I think that we do an injustice to people when that's all we talk about.
that and just yes, and underplaying the dangerousness of it.
Yes,
It's not meant to be an argument against surrogacy
correct.
because, it's real easy for somebody to glob onto that and say that's why she
Yeah,
shouldn't be doing it for somebody else.
that's
No,
right.
because look at the numbers. The majority don't go through
That's
that.
right.
But, the effects of a hysterectomy, the effects of losing your ovaries and what that means from a lifetime perspective and healing. I mean, yours was so long after your contract was terminated. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have any benefits left from your
Oh, no.
contract for it.
No, not at all. Everything came out of my pocket.
Out of your pocket, time away from your family, also off your feet because recovery time's not easy from a
No,
hysterectomy.
no.
Yeah.
And this was a full on I mean, now they have hysterectomies and it's laparoscopic and all
They're
of the
getting
things. Oh,
better
no,
at
this
them,
was
but
not the case for me.
well,
No.
even the laparoscopic ones, those are certain cases. It's not all cases. So
Yes.
there's still times when people need to be completely
Yep.
opened up, and it's just feel like we've thrown those things into the contracts and into the benefit packages as just like this little side note.
Hmm.
And there's been a few in our industry that have started to advocate for what that means. You take her ovaries and she's going to be on hormone treatment potentially for decades.
Hmm.
And what does that look like? And what does that cost look like? And it's not, I mean, I always tease. I lived through my mother trying to balance her hormones when she had her hysterectomy and they removed her ovaries, and it was not pretty.
Hmm.
Not pretty at all, but I was a
Hmm.
tease. So the impact on the family also, but um, we're underscoring the big picture. And so a good agency, I mean, I don't get my hands on people till they've made really, really finalized decisions. I mean, once in a while I get them early and I get to go, oh, go to these agencies. These are
Yes.
the great ones, right? But usually match is done, medical clearance is done, and now they're sitting in front of me and I'm going, what about this? And they go, I've never heard that. And I'm like, of
Mm.
course you haven't. But it's whether when we talk about advocacy, I mean, we always, I think there's a healthy amount of wanting to take care of our surrogates, to advocate for our surrogates. But there's so much focus on the parents who couldn't have children who have had to resort to this. And we've got to keep everybody in mind, the
Yeah.
whole picture.
Yes, we have to keep everybody in mind. We have to also start, I think, and Lord knows there are plenty of reputable agencies, but as agencies, not just as agencies, really as people in this space, we need to make sure that people really do understand all sides, not just one piece. And, you know, it is scary to think about how many new agencies have started who have no business starting an agency, who have They don't vet anybody. They don't, it's just like, oh, you want to be a surrogate? I'm going to be your advocate. And I'm just going to, yes, we're just going to find you a clinic that's going to say yes. And, and it's just going to be great. Not really fully. I mean, there was one time where we had a candidate, she was an experienced surrogate. After her last journey, we got her medical records, and she, in her records, ended up attempting suicide.
Yeah.
So it's like, you stop assuming anything, no assumptions, one. And two, just because somebody has a uterus does not qualify them to be a surrogate. Just because they want to doesn't qualify them to be a surrogate. It is our responsibility to make sure that we are watching out for her well-being, even if she doesn't want to do that for herself, that we're watching out for the parents, but ultimately we're watching out for the child that she's supposed to be help bringing into the world. And we keep talking about the parents, and we talk about the surrogates, or whatever, but there is a human being that we are all collectively bringing into this world together, and we have a responsibility to that child.
Yeah. Well, same argument, which you rarely hear, is just because an intended parent has sufficient funds does not mean they should be going through the journey either. There's a lot of ignoring the need in a very visceral reaction to psychologically assessing intended parents.
Mm-hmm.
We were just at the surrogacy forum in South Africa, and there was a South African attorney who had done some litigation, who was very passionate on this topic, was very angry about Africa wanting to assess parents to see if they should be parents. And I get it. I mean, I get, the average person can go and get pregnant and no one's assessing whether or not I should or shouldn't be a parent. But that's not what we're assessing, or that's not what we should be assessing. What we should be assessing is, can I survive a journey for at least a year with a third party and not take advantage of them and be respectful of them, to carry my child and do everything I'm supposed to do? Put the money on the table when I'm supposed to, be there when I'm supposed to, not just disappear and check out and go, never mind, this doesn't sound good anymore. That's what we should be assessing, but I see so little assessment of intended parents or any real spotlights on that topic. And I don't think there's enough, because I can't tell you, I mean, we've had plenty of surrogates be stuck in situations with no money in escrow, and, angry, mean, intended parents trying to force their way into the labor and delivery room because they feel they have a right to be there.
And, one of the things that we try to impart to our intended parents is, she is a human before she is your surrogate, before she's carrying your child. She's a human. She's somebody else's mother. She's somebody else's wife. She's somebody else's daughter. And all of those things come before you. Now, she has raised her hand and has agreed to do this for you. But at the same time, she has full autonomy over her body, over her life, over her decisions, over all of the things. So you have to give her that, and you have to be able to respect somebody enough to say, I am willing to sacrifice on your behalf. Just that alone should be willing to have you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be gracious. And if I need to go and deal with my own demons, then I need to deal with them separate from her. Because it's not just about, as you stated, the money and all of the things, but is even your mindset right? Have you even mourned the process that you are not going to be able to go through this yourself, in order then for you to be able to accept somebody else to do this for you? Because if you haven't, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to make everybody else around you miserable.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack kind of earlier in our conversation, because there's not enough information out there, and I know we've come a long ways. We've already said we've come a long ways when it comes to looking at people of color within infertility. But what else do you think we need to be doing? Where do you still see the gaps? I personally see I see a lot of gaps at the clinic level. But I also see it from a different angle than the agencies see it. Like I said, we come in at different stages. And I don't always see you see it differently than I do for sure. So,
So yes, there's definitely gaps at the fertility clinic level. I mean, we always talk now post-COVID, pre-COVID, right?
I know that's our whole world.
Yeah. So post-COVID, immediately post-COVID, you would have expected all of the things that happened post-COVID to occur, the delays, the shortages, the communication or lack thereof, all of the things. But the problem is that is still occurring right now. If anything, it's probably gotten worse. So already at the clinic level, I think that there is just a lot of disarray in the fertility clinics and them figuring out things, especially as networks are created and more people are looking at different ways to, quote unquote, help the parents with streamlining processes and helping things as far as cost be more efficient and so on and so forth. But they don't really consider all of the aspects. And the thing about even the BIPOC community, and I hear it so many times that it kind of makes me cringe, is there's a shortage of Black donors. There's a shortage of Black surrogates. No, there is not.
No, they're there. You just, yeah.
There is not. There is not a shortage. There are plenty of women, Black women, who want to be a donor. There are plenty of Black women who want to be surrogates. How are you finding them? Because the same way that you're probably trying to recruit a white woman is not necessarily the same way you're going to be able to recruit a Black woman. You can't speak to them the same way because they are very different human beings. Their experiences have been different. Unfortunately, I'm 50
Their
years old
access
and
to insurance is different too. Yeah.
I'm 50. I wish I could say I've never experienced racism and all of the things, but problem is I can't count how many times I've experienced it. So imagine these same women, even if they're younger, maybe they haven't experienced it as much as I have because I've lived double their life. But I guarantee that they have experienced it even if they didn't know that they did. Because that's just kind of the society that we live in, and that it is okay for that to occur. And I'm not just talking about Black people. It could be Hispanic, it could be Asian,
Native
it could be
American,
whatever.
which is another topic that I could easily
Exactly.
go down.
So the thing about it is that there is not a shortage. It's just how are you going to look for them? What are you doing to actually go and find them? And do you even want to? Because you don't have enough of a BIPOC community to warrant you having them in your pipeline. I was told by an executive from an egg bank one time that they were going to go ahead and put the Black donors' eggs on. They had several Black donors, and they were going to put them on sale because didn't nobody want them anyway.
Jeez.
And then matter of fact, I was at an ASRM conference. We were in a session about the BIPOC community, and a doctor stood up and he said, well, they really have no interest, and there's no trust in the medical care, and there's no trust in the medical community, and da 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 da. And my question to him was like, perhaps there isn't, but what are you doing differently to teach them differently?
Well, what are you doing to develop that trust? I don't trust you either. So what are you doing to change that?
Yeah.
Create the trust.
Yeah.
Can't just
It
say
shouldn't be on them. The onus shouldn't be on them. It should be on us.
it should be on
We're
us.
the professionals.
Exactly. To fill in that hole too on the Native American issue. Now that there are some significant legal issues that you have to be extremely careful with the tribes. They operate as their own nation. They are a separate nation. They do have their own separate rights, but the knee-jerk reaction to 0 donors that are Native American and 0 surrogates that are Native American is not the right reaction. There is a way around it. There is a way to ask for tribal permission. There is a way to look at individual tribes and make decisions, but you have to want to. You have to want to learn. And I've only ever had 2 clinics reach out. Now, they could be reaching out to others, but there's a tendency for people to know I know this topic well, who had said, okay, how do we fix our program? The others just go, oh, that sounds complicated. That sounds like way too much work. We'll just say none. You're going to cut off an entire population that doesn't have access just because you don't want to put the effort in. You don't want to put the work in.
Yeah.
And there's a
And
way.
again, it all goes back to we as an industry have a responsibility. When we raise our hand and we say we want to do this, we have a responsibility. And I think sometimes when you say advocacy, people think, we have to be, at the steps of the government halls and rah, 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 and all that. No, that's not necessarily just advocacy. Just being able to, again, have conversations and be willing to learn from another person's perspective on what they've endured, of what they've seen or what they've experienced or how it can be better for them. That's advocacy.
Educating yourself, reading, learning, showing up. You don't have to show up in Carson City or in Sacramento, California with me. But the very few number of people who make significant amount of money and haven't put any money behind that bill, it helps everybody. I genuinely believe we continue to work on access to insurance. We've got access to care. We still got issues with clinics misbehaving and not creating trust, but we have the ones that have created trust. And if their patients have access to insurance, they can be used at a greater volume and they can do the good that they do and continue the work. But God, when you don't have access to insurance and insurance isn't covering fertility care, then only a very specific set of the population with the sufficient funds, which is very few,
Yes.
can have access.
Well, can have access, and it's not just access to fertility care. It's also these rural areas that don't really have anything in their area to be able to access care. And quite frankly, the joke of offering somebody $5,000 to have a baby when you're also turning around and decimating reproductive care and women's health and all of the things, as well as the new thing that they're trying to put out, productive regenerative medicine, or RRM, or whatever it is. You'll have to look it up. But I'm also or just started with State Strong, and an organization that's also helping with advocacy. And they had just put this out, that state of Arkansas or Alabama, one of the A's. In the legislation is trying to pass this RRM, reproductive regenerative medicine, that is supposed to be like, well, you don't need to do IVF, and you don't just go natural. Just everything is supposed to be hunky dory and whatever. And it's like, well, first of all, everybody is talking out of both sides of their mouth. Because you cannot talk about you're going to give somebody $5,000 and there's going to be free IVF for everybody, and then turn around and say, well, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't have IVF and you can't. Well, which one is it? Which side are you going to stick to? Because at least if you stick to one side, then we'll know how to be able to plan and move accordingly. But when you talk out of both sides of, your face, then I was going to say another word, but when you talk out both sides, then, it's like, well, I can't necessarily believe you. And then these are sound bites that you want to put out there to the general public who don't really know. I mean, we're in this space and we get to hear and we get to, see all of the things that are happening. But for the general public, they have no idea. They don't know. They're just like, yeah, free IVF. This is great. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just like, please.
Yeah.
He don't even know what that means.
Well, and at a national level right now, the fake executive orders that say IVF for everybody, promote it, promote it. Well, you know what? There were a bunch of bills in that building and in DC that could have been supported, that would have given some real teeth behind fertility insurance coverage, that were never supported. So don't give me this fake, I just support it, because that doesn't mean anything. Well, the one thing I can say is, at least with a platform like this, people can hear you, they can know to go to your agency. And, I always say it doesn't take much to figure out how they're involved. So if you're picking an agency or you're picking an attorney or you're picking a clinic, you can search them on the internet and see how many different places they're involved. Are they caring about the greater community and doing more than just making money in their pocket? Or are they just silent on the national realm and just sitting over there being a marketing beast and doing business only?
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
I think you're important. I think you're incredibly important to this industry. And I'm about to tear up. So we need more of you. And thank goodness you're in our space. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on with me today and
you.
sharing. And we'll get this information out there. I'm loved in a weird way. I loved our hysterectomy conversation. I'm trying to push and advocate that we're underplaying that. Just because insurance set it at 12 weeks and $5,000 or $10,000, 5 for a partial, 10 for a whole, it doesn't mean it's that it works.
Yeah. Or
And
that it's going to happen in that particular time
12
frame.
weeks is insane. You had to have had a true emergency during labor and delivery, right? Where they basically just went, all right, during the C-section, we got to keep going. This isn't working out. Or you're still in the
No, and the
hospital,
crazy
right?
thing is I didn't have any complications during the delivery or
Right.
during the pregnancy. This was all after the fact.
Yeah, I don't think we're giving that time frame enough. I think it's not taking care of women. So, and it's set to the insurance amounts. That's where people got those numbers. For the loss of reproductive organs, right? Or that's the time frame. But that's another topic. So, but
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. And
Well, thanks for having me.
I thank everybody for joining us today on this episode of Surrogacy Warrior. I hope you found this discussion enlightening and empowering. I hope that you find the joy in your heart to advocate and do what's right. Don't ignore the things in your heart that you should be pursuing. Your feedback always is important to us. Let us know if you want more topics just like this. Stay connected with us, like us on social media. It, of course, helps. But for now, remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together, we are warriors. And until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for your dreams.
You've been tuning into the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.